All right, everybody, we're going to get going. I know people are going to be joining as we go, but this is a recorded space. You're going to hear this space live after it's done. I know we're going to have a ton of people listening. Tonight, we have ThreeD Capital, the CEO, Sheldon, who has an amazing track record. I can't wait to ask him questions about that. Who's going to be speaking about why IDKFF has been quiet up until this point and what's going on with the company now. Take notes. You're going to want to do your own due diligence on this, but let's get going. Sheldon, I'm excited. Could you start out by just letting everybody know how you got your start in the public markets?
Well, that's a long story. I do believe everybody's going to remember this conversation today because this is basically my first interview that I'm outward looking with the unveiling of what's been happening here for a number of years. But so I have a business degree from the University of Toronto, and I became a chartered accountant, a CPA with Pricewaterhouse. Then I was able to get a very significant job with a major life insurance company as an oil and gas analyst. I had spent some time on the Exxon audit, and I knew a bit about the industry. And while I was an analyst, I convinced them to let me try to start an oil company for them. That became actually a $12 billion company called NAL Resources. It was a trust company in Canada. And then we based out of Calgary. I bought a bunch of assets for them. And in parallel with that, I started investing in emerging businesses. That my very first one was called Telepanel, and we ended up doing online digital displays for supermarket chains for where you go in, you press, and you can see what the unit price is and so forth. It was never done before. It was an LD display. Ended up doing a partnership with IBM and so forth, and it became a reasonably large company. And then I kind of became a serial company starter for them with their capital. And I was there a number of years, and then eventually merged with Molson's, the beer company's venture arm, and I ran that. And anyway, built a number of substantial businesses. And then I sort of had such a bug, but I decided, like, I don't want to work for anybody else. I want to do this myself. And basically, I started my first business, believe it or not, in nuclear medicine. I didn't even know what nuclear medicine was, but within 6 months, everybody was calling me doctor. And we basically developed the first digital nuclear camera, so the resolution of display and so forth, we could detect cancers. Everything else was analog. Did a deal with a company out of Boston and Peabody called Analogic, and the chairman and founder, became my mentor, and Analogic's a pretty big company today, and ended up selling that business and then founding sort of a very similar company, my predecessor to ThreeD Capital, called Pine Tree Capital. And I started my very first investment was a 3D visualization company that just skyrocketed. Unfortunately, the technology on the hardware side was not advanced enough to deal with it. We had to buy a $40,000 silicon graphics box back then. And anyway, even though the application was very robust, and we got Intel Ventures to invest, um, there was too much of a blocking position for companies to look at this data um, at the time in the sense of the investment. Well, today that's a $15 billion company because the founder just stayed with it, and 10 years later, all the technology caught up, and it became a software play, not a hardware enabling play. So anyway, I got the bug. I started to do a lot of biotech investments. This is in the 90s. And for whatever reason, even though I'm a business background, my track record in biotech is in the 90th percentile. I created a company just before the Human Genome Project was mapped called Visible Genetics. I ended up taking it public on NASDAQ. It went to $120. I sold that business to Bear. Then in the early 2000s, I kind of looked at the whole world and got the gold bug and started investing in precious metals and gold, and basically became the third largest player in Canada in that space. And then I got involved in uranium and I became the largest player. My stock with Pine Tree Capital went from 12 cents to $26 post splits, traded billions of shares. I made a lot of millionaires. I had multiple exits of $1 billion plus in multiple industries. Then basically moved on and sort of created a public family office, which is ThreeD Capital. So my son Jackson works with me. We purposely decided to be stealth and build our companies. I'm only interested in talking to people after the fundamentals have been developed and milestones are about to happen. So this is an inflection point for us, and that is, what led me to reach out and talk to people who could influence others in the sense of our story. And our story is quite interesting. Uh,
That's quite a bug. You've got quite a bug to have gone through so many industry sectors and done so many victories up to that point.
yeah, I'm sort of a generalist. I look at
That's
I
amazing,
look at
Sheldon.
all business as people, products, and markets, and I adjust and I learn. And I can get into so many of the different things that we're doing
Yeah.
now as well. But I'll let you ask the questions.
Okay, so just to have everything clear for everyone, how was 3D Capital founded
Well,
specifically?
basically, while I was at Pine Tree, it was a dormant shell company, and it just had a few assets.
I think you're breaking up a little bit. You there? Yeah, Sheldon, you were having a little bit of a reception problem. Can you say that again, please?
Structure was not like many other companies out there where basically people create themselves a lot of cheap shares and promote it and sell their stock and play those games. I'm an insider, so everybody knows what I do. We've had an issuer buyback in place for 3-4 years now, so I'm buying as many shares back as I can, and I believe in the assets. And so this is the next wave of what Pine Tree did, except with a much better capital structure.
Awesome. Um, why are you marketing for the first time now?
Uh, because in the next, I'll say 90 days, but I hate putting myself under any time constraints because you don't really know. But certainly over the course of this year, we have a number of catalysts. And I'll say this, and it's going to sound promotional, but it's not me who defined this. So we have 70 companies. Um, about 20% are in resources, but most of them are in the AI field and AI applications and fintech. And also, we also have some biotech and longevity, and we're doing work with Harvard. I mean, we're doing some amazing stuff, but I'm not really going to focus on those now. They're all private. They're all going to be public, so we're going to have a lot of those events. But we invested in a protocol, and if people know a bit about blockchain, there's a lot of protocols out there like Ethereum that have become very big. And so I looked at the blockchain world, and I looked at the limitations, and I looked at the strengths. So I backed some scientists who were backed by Cambridge University in London and basically created a blockchain like protocol that, unlike blockchain, is no limit to the scalability. So, if people remember Ripple, it was blockchain, a cryptocurrency. The guy behind it was the richest man in the world for a week because they were going to use that as a currency for Amazon and others. It crashed because it's not scalable. This technology that I'm about to talk about is scalable. And the reason I'm just bringing this up of why do I want to speak about things now, we have catalysts and milestones that are in the process of happening now that are extremely, I'll use the word robust. I can be a bit more adjective about that, but we're going to create two companies, organizations, because they're each different, that we've been told are each trillion-dollar companies. The first one is in micropayments. We have cracked the code on the ability of people to do transactions for pennies. Today, you do a transaction, you buy things, it's got to be verified. You need KYC, you need verification, you have different providers taking pieces of this and pieces of that, like Stripe and all the others. And next thing you know, it costs you 50 cents to do a transaction. Our technologies allows our
Wow.
technology allows you to do the transaction for fractions of a penny. So you're a musician. You want to sell someone to listen to your song for 3 cents. You can't do that today because it costs more than that. We can do it. You basically you want to play a video game and you don't want to subscribe to a video game. You don't want to buy a video game, but you want to play it for 10 minutes. There's no model out there that allows you to do that. Maybe you play Fortnite for 10 minutes and it costs you 25 cents. So we are going to disrupt many business models and enhance many business models. So if you're most of the world and you don't want to pay a subscription model to Netflix because you don't want to pay $9.99, $19.99, what it is, but you look at some content that they have from 10 years ago, for example, and you go, I want to watch that documentary, but I don't want to subscribe to Netflix. Netflix, what if I pay you 10 cents? Will you allow us to do it? Well, before and today, you cannot do it because it costs you so much to do it. So we introduced this to Google and the two largest Canadian banks as payment providers, CIBC and RBC, and we are launching as we speak. And it's a company called TotaQ. And we've been told by Google this is $1 trillion space because no one else has the platform and the technology to do this. And I can go on with many, many applications, but another one of our companies here, for example, I run an incubator in my office and I create partnerships for scalability. We have a telehealth company that's created a wearable that's about to get FDA approval for taking your blood pressure. There is no wearable for that that's FDA approved. Blood pressure accounts for almost 20% of pharmacies' income, directly and indirectly. They are creating a wearable where now you can test your blood pressure, which is a precursor to heart attacks and everything. We're saying, let's say every time you take your blood pressure, it's going to cost you a penny. Well, it's impossible to do. Like I said, it's going to cost you 25, 50 cents just to process. I've taken our micropayments company, TotaQ, and I partnered it with the wearable company that's doing that. And now they have an application that's launching for people to take their own blood pressure. And through AI, based on your blood pressure and your ECG, you can predict other health issues. So we're creating a new industry. I guess I'll say that. The applications are totally endless. I encourage everybody to go to look at TotaQ. TotaQ is built on what's called the TOTA protocol. The second application of the TOTA protocol, I mentioned the micropayments, is imagine owning a piece of the Internet of AI. Internet of AI means, and this is not my words, 99.99% of all future AI transactions and initiatives are going to be machine to machine. It's not going to be everybody that goes to ChatGPT and says, okay, I'm going to, give me, create an essay or do this, that. That's going to be such a small part of the future AI world. It's going to be basically machines to machine. There was a company that was in AI, a company called Singularity, run by Ben Goertzel, who's one of the fathers of AI, probably been in the space for 30 years. He was building his Singularity to hope to get to AGI, which is the global brain. It's the nirvana if we can get there. But his problem was he was using Cardano, a blockchain, and he kept running into a wall. It's not scalable. He connected and found TOTA, the same protocol that TOTA Q, which is micropayments, is built on, and said, wow, this is the holy grail. If I put my AI on TOTA, I can now create the first scalable AI communication to AI world, where we can literally do millions of transactions a second. Nothing else can do this right now. So they created Singularity and TOTA, a company called Hypercycle. Hypercycle is the second, I'll call, killer app and trillion-dollar company. I can't tell you who told us it's a trillion-dollar company, but within 90 days, I'll just say that I think we'll get the ultimate endorsement on planet Earth of what we're doing. So I don't expect everybody to understand or believe everything I'm saying. They can do their own homework, and like Josh said, your own due diligence. We're happy, obviously, to follow up with people that want to go down this rabbit hole. But in Hypercycle, which, by the way, ThreeD is the only company out there that owns all pieces of the tech stack that allows micropayments to occur and allows Hypercycle to occur. And what Hypercycle is, it's a token. So we invested 2.5 years ago. Token came live, initial event 1 year ago. It's up 30 times, but it's about to go up 100 times. And what the token enables you to do, if you marry it with a software node and you partner with a data center, and we're doing all that, the operating income that you will create, and anybody can do this, is 100 times what any Bitcoiner will make. And what is it doing? It's allowing machines to talk to each other, and through that, it's enabling for every AI company, which I'm sure everybody knows, AI is growing at 400% a year. We've never seen anything like that in our life. This is a paradigm shift. And I've been planning on this. I've been working on this for 7 years. So I didn't sort of just show up here today and I'm saying, well, don't I have, aren't I the latest and greatest? No, 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 no. On one hand, we got Google and the major Canadian banks. On the other hand, you're going to be hearing about endorsement at the highest level. So both these companies are commercializing as we speak. So that's why I say, or sort of Josh was saying, why do I want to talk now? I want to talk now because both of these are becoming reality. And actually, let me go back to TOTA Q for a moment. 4 years ago, we put out a press release that we invested in TOTA Q, and we've invested in every round. As a result of us being founding investors of TOTA Q, we received 280 million TOTA notes. Now, TOTA notes are worthless until they become worth something. So we don't value them at anything in our company because it never went live. There's no value. Today, when you do a micropayments transaction, you need to use a TOTA note. So TOTA notes have been notionally valued now at $1 US. So as this system lights up, every time a TOTA note gets redeemed, we are part of that pool. So that's 280 million notes times $1 US over a number of years. I'm going to guess 5 years to 7 years. So I'll let everybody do the math. I'm going to go to Hypercycle now. We're founding investors there. Again, 7 years. We're investors in the whole tech stack, and every part of the tech stack gets a dividend as the Internet of AI gets rolled out. It is happening in the next 90 days. So what happens is, and anybody, by the way, who participates in this ecosystem, meaning all of you people, you can do what ThreeD is doing, but you can't do it to the same depth because we have 7 years of history. But you could go out and buy a node, you can buy a token, and the company tells you exactly what you do to marry the node to the token. It's actually almost idiot-proof. Or you can buy a hardware box for your office. It's called Hyper Appliance, which costs you less than $1,000. You get a node and you get a token with it, and you get monthly income. And you buy the box for $1,000. I think it starts off at $100 a month, but it's going to go to $1,000 a month. So, and what this is doing, it's allowing the AI world to create compute power, which is in massive short supply, and enable for AI machines to talk to AI machines. This is my biggest idea that I've been involved in the maybe 500 companies that I've started, and it's the Holy Grail. So Hypercycle
Hey, Sheldon, I have a
is going
question.
live now, and so that is why I want to sort of bring it up to just expose it. But you know, it's a rabbit hole to go down to understand.
I have a serious question from investors in the room. Where can they find more information about TotaQ?
I
So
just dropped some in the chat there below. And the website, correct me if I'm wrong, it's
Awesome.
totaq.net. Is that right, Sheldon?
yes, and I'll tell you what's just hot off the press. Okay, Jackson, perhaps you can send it to Josh. I want everybody to look at a 2-minute video using micropayments for health information that around predicting your health that is going to go live shortly. It's just one small application. Again, all of this is, you know, I just sent it to my wife and kids. I say, look at this. You know, an AI bot to ask you 4 questions. You just check your vitals, which we do, and using micropayments, you pay 20 cents, and you suddenly get a whole profile of your of the potential for you to have health problems. And it's all through AI because everything is being searched. So it's very, very interesting. I want you to watch that. So TotaQ, the information's out there. You know, it's just drilling down. I believe everything is out there in the public domain. You know, including, you know, some of the names that I've mentioned. Hypercycle, you can do the same. And Hypercycle is an ecosystem, again, to create the Internet of AI. Like imagine having like a fraction of a percent that you had leverage into that ecosystem as a financial investor. You actually can do it. And again, this is the most mind-boggling thing I've ever done. Because I've been involved in it for 7 years and because it's getting commercial, like literally within 90 days, and there's a lot of information out there that you can see on Hypercycle. Nick Black does a weekly blog where he talks about it with the founder. The founder's name is Tufi Saliba, and him and Dan Tolliver created Toda. So Tufi and Dan, that's the protocol, and then everything builds on that. So, like I said, the one killer app application is TotaQ, and then the other is Hypercycle. So those are 2 reasons that I wanted to really. I just want people to follow it. I'm not expecting anybody to do anything necessarily on an investing basis about it until they see it in operation. But I want I want to create those eyeballs before it happens. So you know what? No one sort of says, well, why didn't you talk about this before? So it's all there. And then we have 68 other companies in ThreeD, and ThreeD trades at
Wow.
50% of its value. Now, when I talked about value, I mentioned 280 million TOTA notes. That's worth 0. So it's not even in our values. So the values that our auditors said are concrete because they're going concerns, we just reported as 85 cents. These are in Canadian dollars. And the shares trade at 40 cents. And not only on top of that, we also have a lot of assets in the digital world. And many of them are starting to come public in the next 4 months. And let's just say that we invested in a rival to Binance 4 years ago, and it's a licensed Binance. So not all the issues and regulatory problems, it's fully licensed. And it's going to start to trade in 60 to 90 days. So we're very leveraged, if you will, to the digital world, which I'm a big believer in. But we also have 20% in resources because we have some of the biggest assets there in the country of Botswana, for example, that the U.S. government is going to get behind because it involves critical minerals for the EV and military industry. But I don't want to get off on a tangent, Josh. I'll let you direct the questions. I'm not sure what people want to hear about.
Well, I think I'll guide you down a path that should cover a good foundation of information for these people to understand the investment itself. You have a wealth of information to share, and there's a lot to go behind a blockchain, computing, and that, what you explained. Some people may not understand that, but for instance, I've used Polygon's platform for a long time using Matic, and it costs a lot, and the transactions are slow, and they don't always go through, and it can be frustrating. But you're saying that through TotaQ and Hyper,
Cycle. Yeah. So with
that you can transact in microseconds.
so yes, so that scalability. So these are the algorithmic points. So scalability is there. No limit to the number of transactions per second. No, almost no limit on the downside of the price. Fractions of a penny. But let me say one thing that there's so much information I forgot. When I talked about hypercycle, the people who are involved in the hypercycle network, in other words, again, anybody here can buy a hypercycle token, so they're involved. Or if you want to buy a node, or if you may know what a node is or not, you'll find someone. You can own a node on its own. You can own a token on its own. You can own hardware. We've chosen not to enter the hardware space. The data center provides that. But if you buy a token, and you can buy a node, and you can do that, and you put them together, what you're basically enabling, all the AI tech companies, their costs of compute per month is staggering and exponentially, geometrically growing. If they use hypercycle, and what hypercycle likes to say is, we're your electricity. Don't change what you're doing. You don't have to change your protocols. You're not risking what you're doing. You allow hypercycle to plug into your system. Okay, it's as simple as that. The first year you saved over 20% on your compute per month. The second year you save over 40%. Some companies are spending millions a month on compute power because that is the biggest bottleneck in AI today. This hypercycle, enabling computers and AI to talk to AI and make them all smarter. So we're not saying, hey, we're only OpenAI, or we're Elon Musk AI, or we're Anthropic. No, all of you guys, we're going to make you talk to each other so you're all smarter. But not only that, everybody who is doing compute. Think of Adobe. Think of NVIDIA. They're spending millions, if not hundreds of millions a month on compute. We will save them 40% of that cost because of what we're doing. If you own a token, you own a node, and you tie it in, we're helping them subsidize as a deficit in a way to reduce their costs. So the value proposition here is a no-brainer. And the ultimate objective is AGI, the global brain. And not only that, let me just say one other observation. We are decentralized. The problem that people find with AI, and you've heard Musk say it and others, are you going to have a global Hitler? Are you going to have somebody who goes, I want to take the world down because of my beliefs, or Putin? Decentralized does not allow that to happen. So everybody has a say in what's going on. So nobody can be the dictator of AI. And that is the moral issue that people are, who throw rocks at AI are worried about, is the radical destruction that could occur. So that's why this hypercycle and the vision of Ben Goertzel and then Tufi with Toda, believe is the holy grail from a morality standpoint, and also allowing the industry to grow by creating the compute power and reducing computing costs. And what's really interesting is that the participants in that ecosystem can be any one of you, any one of us. All you have to do is, again, look at this, understand it. Don't rely on me. Don't rely on me. But just try to get your smartest people to look at this if you're not tech savvy, or that even if you are, that you want to, get evidence, is that everybody can participate in the ecosystem of AI growing and get an income. Like in other words, every AI system is going to pay every other AI system, and this ecosystem, if you own a token or a node, you get a daily dividend because you're investing in the ecosystem. And so obviously, as more people want to get into this ecosystem, the token's going to rise a lot and the nodes are going to rise a lot because the demand, people are going to realize, holy cow, you mean I can earn this by just enabling all computers to talk to each other through this Internet of AI, as we call it? And like I say, in about 60, 90 days, we're going to get an endorsement that is as good as it gets. And, people are going to go, okay, I'm not going to believe this Sheldon guy. Who is he? I've never heard of him. And I'm not expecting you to, believe me. And all I'm telling you is what I put 7 years of my life into and a great deal of capital in this protocol. The protocol was not going after this application 7 years ago. But it was scalable and extremely low cost. And what came out of it is micropayments, and what came out of it is now Hypercycle, the Internet of AI.
Well, I'll tell you that, being a Canadian person, I have heard of the Sheldon. So,
Oh,
I mean, it
okay.
means a lot. It's pretty exciting to hear it coming from you. So I've been listening really intently. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'll mention one other AI company that we own. And again, this one we've been involved in 3 years, and we've been the sole funder of, because, let's face it, we've been in a bear market for junior stocks for a long time. Yes, the big fangs and all are getting, they're sucking all the oxygen out, they're getting the money. But, it's very spotty that, you've seen microcaps make big moves because the velocity of money has just not been there. So one of the companies, and again, we have a YouTube channel, and we're interviewing all our founders. So if you go there, you're not going to, and by the way, Hypercycle and TotaQ are the next two. So they have not been interviewed, but you can go online and see them interviewed in their own world. But I want them to tell the story. I don't want to be shoot the messenger, right? So one of them that just got interviewed a couple days ago is a company that we're involved in called Infinity AI. And because we were the sole investor, we cut a very hard deal with the company. And we own 20% of the company, whatever. It's a very micro market cap. What they do, they've created proprietary algorithms using AI to manage smart cities. And when I say smart cities, there can be many aspects. It's for sewage and water. And all these cities have massive amount of waste. They all lack an infrastructure. They can't expand, so they have to make what they have more efficient as population expands and there's more households and bigger towers of condominiums and so forth. They're going to be profitable this summer. They're doing monthly recurring revenue. They've gotten city after city. They've gotten 10 municipalities around the GTA, which is Toronto. They've gotten around in Montreal. They've gotten Miami-Dade. They've gotten, I think, Los Angeles. They've gotten, and they're working with all of them. And this company is totally off everybody's radar. These are the companies that we like to invest in. But this company is going to be profitable and is trading at 5-6 cents. Okay. Now, I'm not recommending to buy it, but what I'm saying here is that hiding in plain sight, there are very few funders of these companies. So that's what I like to do. But most investors, they can't find them, or they can't negotiate the same type of deal that we can. We basically bought convertible debentures. We get paid interest, and it converts to shares and warrants. So we get the ultimate leverage. So we don't really value our warrants. So the leverage of things like that are tremendous. But it's another AI company that we have that I believe the upside, I believe the shares should be trading on a multiple of MRR, which is called monthly recurring revenue, is typically 10 to 20 times. And it's trading at maybe 3 times. So these are things that we like to see. And then we get very involved with management. We want to be hands-on. We're not passive. We bring value added, and we also create partnerships with other companies. And that's what we like to do a lot, because that's how they can scale without having to reinvent the wheel and go, I want to do what you do. No, no, no. Time to market issues are hugely important. We all have limited capital. How do we get market share as quick as we can, because there's going to be competition? So these are the types of things that meet our criteria at ThreeD, and we want to be very early, because if we can't get 50 to 100 times our money, we do not invest. Okay, so the way to do that is,
That makes a lot of sense.
and because we're gonna help make that value happen. So we want to get involved early. We want management to buy in with us and listen to us, because we do have some experience, and then we help build it, and that's where we get these billion-dollar companies. And in the AI world, there's going to be so many of them. It's inevitable, and we also have interest in 3 companies in California in longevity, and 2 of them are ranked top 5 in the world. Private companies that will be public, they will be doing IPOs on NASDAQ. We have a company that we partnered with Harvard that basically, it's wild. You can put headphones on, and through thinking, you can do things like change your music, change a screen on your PowerPoint, all through electronic waves through your brain. Private, this year it's commercializing. They have a couple strategic partnerships I can't talk about that are with brand names that would want this type of technology. And the US military is embedding it. Because imagine you're a pilot and you suddenly go, I got to react to something. Well, if you think about it, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's a company called Neurable. So you can go and find that out there and do your work. So we invest in extremely disruptive technologies that have huge upside. And again, why I'm talking about it now is because all these companies have entered commercialization as we speak. We have a cybersecurity company that was part of a consortium that got a $200 million contract yesterday by the Canadian government for their CF-18 aircraft. It's an extremely interesting cybersecurity that detects incoming pulses before the brains of computers recognize it, so they know that there's an incoming intervention from bad guys. And again, it was part of this big contract, so we know that company is moving along. So a lot of milestones are being hit. So a lot of things to talk about. I posted, by the way, that on my LinkedIn and Twitter yesterday. So I do post when these things occur. I don't do press releases, but I'll post events through those investee companies.
Now, for all these investors that are looking at IDKFF and considering potentially investing in the company or not, I want to go over a few things that really help someone understand how the company is positioned. Can you share with us what's the company's share structure like at the present moment?
Like I say, I think there's just under 52 million shares out, and we buy back shares when we're not blacked out around earnings. So we bought a bunch back today. So we're buying our shares back, and we bought about 3.5 million shares back in the last 2 or 3 years. So we continue to buy shares back.
And how much is held at DTC or in the float at the present moment?
So it's literally a public family office. So in a way, we are about as aligned with shareholders that you can ask, because if we hurt the company, we hurt ourselves. So we're totally aligned. And I would say the float is probably 20 million shares.
Okay. And now you mentioned shareholders, and you obviously, from your previous statement, clearly hold a value in shareholders. Share with everybody here, how much do shareholders matter to you, and what ways do you go about showing them value?
Well, first thing, because I'm the largest shareholder, I care a lot. So if I hurt the shares, I hurt myself. I keep expenses low. I care about profit. We've gone through a very bad bear market in the last 2, 3 years, yet our asset value per share has risen. So that happens when you care. I've done no dilution. There's been no private placements or pipes or anything like that. We're buying back our shares, so we consider the shares a bargain because they're trading at 50% of their value. And as I mentioned, the value's understated because we've written off a lot of things because the auditors say until you're profitable in your investment company or your investee company, we don't want you to market. We want you to write it down. So, it's a very, very conservative number. So, buying back the shares, keeping expenses low, um, I think, and maximizing the economics of every deal we do. So every time I look at negotiating a deal with a company, I want to get the best deal because I'm going to do the best as the largest shareholder, and everybody who wants to tag along can also do very good. And we're extremely transparent as well. So if you watch my LinkedIn and Twitter, I put out as all the news that's related, that's relevant. I don't put out press releases very often because there's a lot of criteria on disclosure, materiality, and I don't like to be promotional. So I kind of keep press releases at a minimum, but through social media, and Jackson, my son, manages all that. We post a lot of data, a lot of information where people can connect the dots.
Now, that brings me to another question. Is there any insider buying that's expected, or do you do that on a regular basis?
While we're doing our issuer buyback, insiders are not allowed to buy because it would be competing with the company. So if you look at our issuer buyback, that's the ultimate in insider buying because it's the company buying its own shares back.
Oh, of course, of course. How many did you have a cap on how many shares you're planning on buying back, or the amount of money you're trying to spend on doing that?
We're limited to 5% of the outstanding shares per year, so it's about 2.5 million shares a year.
Awesome. Well, you've said a lot about the number of events. Phenomenal, your history, your background, the way you've been able to build things up, and
Hello? Jason, you there? I lost you.
it's Joshua. Can you hear me?
Josh, I lost you there for a moment.
Oh. Can you hear me,
Yes, I
Sheldon?
can.
Okay. How is it that you find and source your investments?
Well, I've been around this business for a long, long time. I have a very, very high level of deal flow across industries. I know a lot of people. It's never, ever been like something. Now, we are also out there as protagonists. So we're going to the NVIDIA conference in San Jose starting Monday. We'll be there on Sunday, and we network with all the VCs, with all the hedge funds, the investors, the companies, and we try to find our own deals because sometimes deals that come your way, been around the block, and we like to find needles in a haystack. We want to find unique opportunities that are not shopped around, and that is organically how we have found the best things that we've done. But there is no limit on a weekly basis of over the transom that how many projects arrive on our desk or through through our phones. It's tremendous number, and we do a very like less than 1%, 0.1% of everything that comes our way. We in fact actually act on.
Man, you've done an amazing job at locking down, from what you said, 70 investments. What are the main sectors that you focus on? And how is the best expert? Who was the best expertise in each area that at ThreeD for these sectors?
So how we approach this as follows. I'd say we have silos. Our main silo is AI. The next one is fintech. The next one is biotech. Then we have resources, which I've done very well in the past, but it's a much smaller percent of the portfolio than it ever has been. And then I'll sort of just use the word tech. And what we do is, Jackson is very much an expert in biotech and in many areas of tech. And what we do is, rather than just have all these people who are consultants, because every time you bring in people, they always tell you what you want to hear. So depending on the deal, we do due diligence differently, and we seek out what we believe are the biggest experts in those fields, and we go to them and have them critique the business plan, the technology, the market. So rather than building a big overhead here at ThreeD, I keep the overhead very low. And when we need the expertise, I'll go out and almost contract it for that specific assignment. So we have access to all the thought leaders and key people, technically, financially, market-wise. We know how to find it. And Toronto has a huge resource of that. I'm very involved with the University of Toronto. I get access to professors. I'm very tied with hospitals. I get doctors that look at things. So it's about getting out in the community and seeing who best in class is, really, to help you analyze.
So how do you incubate the businesses when you do exit and know how to exit?
Sorry, how you incubate or how you exit?
No, how do you incubate businesses, and when do you exit and know how to exit?
So that's our business, is incubation. I have 7 companies work out of my office here in Toronto that they're in front of us every day, all the time. Many of them now, for example, I mentioned micropayments before, and I mentioned telehealth for blood pressure wearable that have just done a deal. Well, we created that bridge. And so we're constantly working with our investee companies deeply, daily. That's something that I've done forever, and I do at the back of my hand, basically. In terms of exiting, every situation is different. Obviously, when something IPOs, we just had a Bitcoin miner that we were in for 3 years. It just IPO'd on NASDAQ, and we exited, and we made a multiple on our investment. So the public market can be an exit, but also we invest in companies that are already public, like Infinity AI. And so, you know what? If it depends on what our value targets are, every situation's different. Sometimes the markets get so exuberant that you're up 50 times before you know it, and we take some money off the table because we need to sell and exit so we can do the next deal. That's how we've survived all these years without doing any funding and without diluting the company. So, and in some cases, we've had private companies that have been acquired. Our cybersecurity company that got that major contract yesterday, I believe, is going to get sold to another cybersecurity company. So that's that. Every situation has a different strategy.
There's a lot of work that goes into this, man. I can't say how impressed I am with the number of companies you've been able to incubate, enter, help grow and then exit in such a grand fashion. Do you mind sharing the name of the company that just listed on NASDAQ?
Griffin, Gryphon, Griffin Mining, I think they call it. It's a Bitcoin miner.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar. That's interesting. So are you and your investment revenue and profit, are you and your investments revenue and profit producing?
So typically when you invest in early stage, you're investing for revenues to occur. So in many cases, they're pre-revenue. But again, why am I doing this call today? They're all transisting, if that's the word, into the revenue growth phase. In Canada, we call it the hockey stick, hopefully, where you get the big jump. To be profitable, I actually don't like companies that are profitable. I want them to invest all their cash flow into building the business, because you sell businesses really at a multiple, in many cases, to revenue, especially in tech. By the time they're profitable, they're too mature, we will probably exit. So it's the operative word, I think, is revenue growth. And if you can be Q on Q, 30% growth, you can trade at a 20 times multiple to top line. That's the type of numbers that I try to get to, because companies want to acquire other companies that are in a growth trajectory. That's very critical to them.
My next question is, right now you're trading at like 300% discount to your audited NAV. How does your reporting work, and how conservative is it?
So maybe it's just a terminology. So our NAV is 85 cents Canadian. That NAV is extremely conservative. So I'm not going to suggest what it is, but I believe the intrinsic value is much higher. Where we trade is at 50% of our NAV. So we trade at 40 cents Canadian. The NAV is 85 cents Canadian. But I believe the NAV is much higher, so really we're trading at a much higher discount than, say, 50%. But what's going to happen here, in my view, is once the NAV starts to grow and people see that growth. When I had Pine Tree Capital, which went from 12 cents to $26, we traded at 2.5 times NAV. We're trading now at 50 cents, 50% of NAV. If we traded at 2.5 times NAV, we would be now $2 to $2.50 a share. We're trading at 40 cents. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to get the growth rate of our business such that we're going to get paid a multiple. So for all these time, yes, we've grown our business, but I've never talked to new investors. It's basically buying our shares back, because buying our shares back was a very, I'm investing in ourselves and reducing the float and increasing by buying shares back, you actually increase your NAV per share. And we've been able to do that. So now with being, basically starting to tell the story, or at least give the audience, all of you, the ingredients to do due diligence. I'm going to let everybody make up their own mind what they think all of these individual assets and the sum of the whole will be worth, and come up with your own model and your own value proposition. And with our public disclosure and then my social media, where you, like, for example, yesterday, the cybersecurity company that we invested in was called Pelotronica. I've never even mentioned that we invested in this company, but I posted yesterday that they were part of a $200 million contract. They were named in the press release that was put out by, I think, the Canadian government or the reseller, I'm not sure. So people are going to, oh, okay, that's that's interesting. Now, I am restricted from because we have all these rules and regulations of being a public company. I can't really talk about values that we don't disclose. So those values basically get disclosed cumulatively when we announce our NAV on a monthly basis. So we announce our NAV, by the way, every month on about the 6th or the 7th day following the month end. So we just did that a few days ago. And so you really will get a feel for the consolidated position, but some individual positions I'm not allowed to talk about in terms of numbers because they're not in our financial statements. So, but again, everybody can develop their own model. They can, for example, go back 4 years and look at our press release that we own 280 million TOTA-Q notes. And now TOTA-Q is valued at $1, and the company is commercializing with Google, CIBC, and RBC. The big launch is the end of March at a big center in Toronto. There's going to be a major, like hundreds of people from all the banks, all the tech companies, all the tech writers. This is going to get a lot of press. So the sponsors of that event are Google, RBC, CIBC, and ThreeD Capital. Those are the 4 sponsors. So we're in good company, and it's going to get written up, I can tell you, in all the tech magazines, fintech. So again, I'm getting ahead of what I think is a wave. I believe there's a wave coming, and I never know what's going to start the wave. All I know is the downside is very limited. How big is the upside? That, people can judge for themselves. Some people buy the shares and are happy with 5 cents profit. Some people that rode with me at Pine Tree made an exceptional amount of money. But, we're dealing in a high risk area. I mean, I want to warn everybody. I mean, these are early ventures. You have to continue to finance them. You have to continue to manage them. But I work 7/24. This is my passion, frankly. That's what I live for, is building companies and the integrity of building companies. And frankly, a lot of the money I give away. You know what? I don't care. Like I really want to build it. I've built many jobs. We've gotten a lot of recognition for the companies that we created, and I just want to continue doing that until I can't. I don't got the energy, or I don't have the physical, or whatever. But I'm happy. I just spent 3 weeks in Africa on our projects. Then I flew to Miami for a conference. Then I flew to Toronto for a conference, and now we're flying to San Jose for an NVIDIA conference. So we're out there. We're not living in a cave and not really knowing what's going out there. And we find things that I would say many others don't, because we have access. We know how to get there. So we're going to find projects that most people would never see in their life. And what you're buying with ThreeD is you're buying a diversified portfolio where, let's say, you don't know what the best AI deal is, or you don't know what the best mining deal is, or you don't know what the best fintech deal is, or the best longevity. If you want to participate in longevity, there's no companies that are public. We have 3 of them. So you get exposure, and longevity is going to be one of the greatest breakthroughs. It already has broken through in what we like to call health span, not lifespan, health span. How do you live longer healthily? So there's a doctor who's an advisor to one of our companies called Stephen Horvath. He just basically discovered a few years ago what's called the epigenetic clock. And what it basically is, when you're 75, as an example, as a person, your heart doesn't wear out. Your heart can keep going. Your heart and your organs are like software programs, and there basically is a brain that says, "Guess what? You've been going for 75 years. Time to start working. Stop working." It's like crazy simple as that. The epigenetic clock tells you the actual life of things. And now with drugs, and they're starting to happen. Again, we have 2 that have made breakthroughs in this area. You can install these drugs into the human body, and it actually tells your heart that you're no longer 75, you're 40. And that's why Bezos has put billions into it. That's why Dubai funds they've raised over $1 billion to do this. We have a company on the West Coast in the Bay Area that had just written up in a science magazine the longest living rat in human times. So the average life of a rat is 24 to 36 months. This rat lived to 48 months. Now, it may not sound like a lot in months, but percentage-wise, it's massive. And what they did is they took the blood plasma of a young mouse, or a rat, sorry, and they put it into an old rat that was about to die. And the old rat became young, and how we knew that is what's called grip strength. They kind of hang on these bars and all that. And so that extended the life. A massive, massive VC out of Silicon Valley has just put a term sheet in front of the company, and they've had many, many multi-billion-dollar exits. The guy's track record is one of the best in Silicon Valley, and they're going to get behind this company. And we're founding investors of that. Well, you know what? You're going to have a company, they're going to trade at easily $10 billion market cap. Well, when we invest what we invest, even though, we don't put up millions, but what we put up, it will be hundreds of times in our money. So I don't talk about longevity much because milestones are few and far between, and it's science driven. And sometimes it's like watching paint dry. It's not like watching a public company and they get a contract and the stock moves up. So we like to just talk about these things when there's an event, and that event moves the needle, and then we disclose it. So I have done some of that. If so, you'll see a company called Turn Bio. I've talked about that in social media, but I haven't talked what our interaction is. But I don't put things on social media unless we participate in them. So there's a way of following it. But those are companies that are also in our mix. But you know what? If I start talking about every company, we'd be here till tomorrow night, and
Yeah,
everybody would
let's save
forget
something
about
for the next
it.
space.
Everybody forget about
Let's save something for the next space. We're going to have you on here in about 2 weeks to follow up on some of this exciting news that's being put out. If there's a question in the room, one of the investors asked, how come there was no volume today? And I don't, just so everybody in the room is aware, this is the first time since 2021 that Sheldon has come out and began to market his company. So this is his coming out party. It's the beginning of quite a lot of marketing exposure that's going to be had for IDKFF over the next few months. I'm excited to see it because a lot of the companies that they have taken time to invest in and incubate and work with really deserve that exposure. Which leads me
Josh.
to one of my
Yeah,
final
but
questions.
Josh, I can, sorry, Josh, can I,
Yeah,
sorry, can I just give a 10-second response?
I
Yeah,
hope so.
all our volume currently is in Canada. So we trade every day. We traded 40 odd thousand shares today in Canada. Remember, we're at the low now. So not a lot of stock trades at the low because the sellers, they're washed up. We had tax law selling So if you look in Canada under the symbol IDK, you'll see volume every day. In the US, only when Americans start to buy the stock does it trade in the US. So and by the way, many come directly to Canada as well. So it's not just like that. So we do trade, but you can at least follow the volume in Canada until the US starts. And also, we are listed in Frankfurt, and a group out of Frankfurt just came and visited me, and they're blown away. I can just tell you, they're blown away, and they want to start marketing us in Germany. So we may get volume in Frankfurt, we may get volume in America, and we have volume currently every day in Canada.
That's an excellent answer. I know you're duly listed, and I didn't think to expose or explain that to some of the people on the
That's okay.
call.
Yeah, and I posted a chart
And
in the
that's a huge
comments showing the
difference.
volume for IDK as well.
I'm sorry?
I posted a chart in the
Oh,
comments
thank
showing
you.
the volume for IDK.
Yeah, no, thank you. And you can go back 2-3 years, you can see the volume. We at times we've traded a lot. I think we've got as high as $2.85 a share Canadian, something like that. That was in like 2020 or something.
So that leads to another question that'll help everybody get a good visual of this. What other ways do you plan on getting exposure for the company? I mean, do you plan on doing it through more spaces like this or collaborations with larger companies? What other plans do you have in that
Okay,
area?
it's a very good question. So today, like I say, everybody just remember today, or you'll forget today. It's okay. But this is the very first interview I've done. Now, I've done some interviews with Hector of PHK that we put on our YouTube channel, but none of that's been exposed yet. We're just building the content so anybody can actually go. I did an interview, my son did an interview, and now we're interviewing, let's say, our top 10 investee companies. We don't want to overwhelm everybody because, we could have a lot. So today is the first one. I am interviewing an influencer a week. And now we're lining up someone else that likes the story. Well, yesterday, very interesting story, if I still have a couple minutes, Josh. I had a company meeting during the big conference here that there were like 100,000 people came in. It was for mining, but they come in for all kinds of reasons, and came in to show me his company. And I was blown away. It's a carbon credit exchange and what they do. And immediately he saw on my whiteboard some information about micropayments. He was blown away. They're doing a deal now to do micropayments for carbon credits. He then told me of his connections with influencers that are mind-boggling. Very close personal friends of his, this and that. So I had a call this morning. His name's Chad. And he was very interested in our micropayments, so he respects me now. I hadn't met him before. And he's creating now introductions to these players that he told me about Versus AI, a company that went from 40 cents to $5. And he says, these people are amazing. And I go, I'm not interested. I'm not doing any pump and dumps, just so y'all know. All I want to do is people to follow all the things I'm talking about. Let them make their own decisions. I'm not going to arm wave. I'm not going to give you price targets. I'm not going to do any of that. So today is the first forum like this. I'm going to get other people. I'm going to talk to as many people as I have to talk to, because that's what I did with Pine Tree. Newsletter writers. Like I say, we have a call Friday morning with Germany. They want to write us up in a research report, take us out to their network, because they're already a co-investor in one of our companies that I built, and it's mind-boggling. I haven't even talked about it on this call. It's called Avicana. It's going to be the only major drug company in medical cannabis. Not all the bullshit of medical cannabis for CBD and THC. No. Drugs that are approved by the FDA. We just got our first drug approved. And we've done we're about to do 4 pharmaceutical deals. So it's a company called Avicana. I can go on how amazing it is. The group out of Germany is an investor. If you speak to the management of Avicana, they'll tell everybody, without me, there's no company. 7 years. I have $11 million into it too. But now I believe this is going to be a $1 billion company. And again, I've built companies in the biotech space, but I didn't bring it up because there's so many things to talk about. But anyway, just to answer Josh's question, this is my kickoff. Today is my first presentation. Everybody who cares about ThreeD, I'm going to talk to. I'm not going to go on some bullshit promotion stuff. I'm just going to tell everybody as much of the story as I can tell them. So when Hypercycle makes the news and things happen and the token takes off even more than it is now, or TotaQ launches it with Google and it's written up in all the major newspapers and magazines in America, well, people are going to look at it and go, geez, how can I invest in this? Well, you can't, because they're not public. You only can invest through ThreeD. So my objective here is to create these connections so that people come back and go, holy cow. Well, how many points do you need to own of $1 trillion business like the Internet of AI? Imagine you could own a piece of that. Well, we own all the pieces. It's just an all or none business. Until it happens, you get no value. But once it happens, I'm telling you, it's going to happen. So I just want to let everybody know about these companies that most people have never heard of, and let them do their own homework. And you know what? In this business, you say you do 1 in 10, you get a home run, it pays for all your losses. My historical percentage, I can tell you, is much better than that. So I just want to go out, Josh, and work hard for the shareholders so that the value of the company goes up. That's my objective, and I can only do that through my mouth.
That's a fabulous objective. I do have a few investors that want to ask some questions. So if you don't mind, if I open up the floor to investors to ask questions, I'd love to give them the opportunity.
Please, I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, 1 second. Stock awareness, where you at, man? Raise your hand. Okay, where you at?
Looks like
Hello,
he's
can you hear me?
connecting now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, stock awareness.
Hey, Sheldon, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I have a question on the relative Canadian to U.S. Is there a conversion rate from your Canadian price to the American? And if the Canadian moves up and down, and the U.S. does not, does that mean the U.S. doesn't have liquidity? Can you kind of explain that to us?
So, I've watched this, call it arbitrage.
Okay.
So the market makers in the U.S. are extremely sensitive to changes in exchange rate and changes in pricing. So
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
what I have found, because I have the ticker for the US for ThreeD on my screen, just like I do, for the US symbol, just like I do for many of the other companies we're involved in, which are interlisted. Like, for example, I haven't even talked about our data company. We're about to do a deal with NASDAQ. They say it's the best deal they've ever seen, and involves data like the S&P and so forth. I don't want to talk about that name now because I want the CEO to be interviewed on the site here. But it's like an amazing story. But the reason I bring that up
Will
is,
that be under this ticker also?
well, it's in ThreeD. It's
Okay.
in ThreeD. It's one of our
Which is
companies.
IDKFF,
Yeah,
right? You're
yeah.
talking about?
So
Okay.
I watched their Canadian ticker and their US ticker, and they trade in both markets more actively than we do. And every time that I see the Canadian market, which is the primary market, but sometimes the US can become the primary market. It
Right.
could take over from Canada. But let's say now it's the primary market's Canada. I notice 100 times a day, my screen flashes. There might not be a trade, but the bid and ask adjust to what's happening in Canada, like real time. So I believe that there are algorithms with the market makers in the US that they don't even have to be paying attention, that as soon as there's a change in bid ask and volume, the US quote adjusts to it. Now, the only difference you may find in the US is the spread may be a bit wider,
Right.
and that tightens as volume increases.
Right. Now, one of my main questions, I've traded one of these before, and it can be very good. My question is, can they short this or not? Because of you're in two different markets. I don't think they can, right?
No, but all stocks today are naked shorted, just so
Yeah,
you
no,
know.
I know that, but I mean, doesn't it make it much harder because of the exchange rate? They need a lot of conversion software
Yeah,
going at the same time.
it does. I think you have their fingerprints around things. They always will, but it makes it more challenging. And especially a stock that doesn't have gazillions of shares out, it's very tough for them to play those games.
Right, right. Which, yeah, I like this play because of that reason. I think that's kind of my question. Has this U.S. What is the most volume the U.S. ticker has traded in a day, and how long has there been a U.S. ticker out?
So I'd say we've had it for maybe 5 years or something. So I think you'll be able to go back and do a historical check. But we have traded a lot of volume in the U.S. But so, ever since we've entered this bear market on the juniors, which happened, I'll say, maybe during COVID, everything just started to break down. Um, volumes declined and stocks fell. We held up actually, not bad. Like most stocks are down 90, 95%, depending on what industry. But we have had substantial volumes there because we had a bunch of hedge funds in New York that loved us. And I want to get those types of people back in driving it. But you have to look, I don't have it in front of me, but I think that data is available.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chart now. I've gone over this a few times. Back in February of 2021, the stock ran to over $1.63 a share. Had a large amount of volume for let me see, from December into March, and then it had another run again right after that from 49 cents to $1.26, and that was in September.
Yeah.
Of 2021.
Yeah. Oh, 3 years ago. No, less than 3 years ago. Yeah. Well, sort of around that.
And keep in mind, there's been no dilution since that point. So there's no, there's the stock's going to move easily with the tight float they
And
have.
we bought back 3 million shares. I'm buying back as much as I can. I'm limited to 25% of the daily volume, so you should know.
How many shares are in the float?
20 million.
And that's combined both like USA, Canada.
Yeah, that's totally like out there to trade. And I would say of that, I would take 5 million away, but I don't want to start doing that. So just say 20 million.
Well, it says on OTC markets, it says, and it says it's an updated number. It says there's 25,164,000 in the float, and 3 million of that's held at DTC currently.
Oh, okay. So I'm not far off. I don't look at those things actually. So, but I'm squeezing the float down.
Does anybody else have any questions? I mean, there was a lot covered on the AI technology, just between the two companies of Totaku and Hyper.
Hypercycle.
Hypercycle. There's a ton of information there. If you have any questions about that, I suggest looking up some information like on what platforms or what blockchains offer processing or computation of transactions, how fast they are, and then compare it to the information that he shared about Totaku and see the difference in the speed, difference in the cost. I think that goes a long way in showing you the value that's being presented here in the investment itself.
Yeah, and there will be third-party verification, and as they come out, I will post them where, you can look at Google, listen to what they have to say, not me, and so forth. So, and anybody, again, going down a rabbit hole, all the information is available through websites and so forth, interviews. Get somebody, if you're not an expert yourself, to look at it and I think it'll be interesting. So, but I think everybody should do their own homework on this for sure. I'm the horse. I'll lead you to water. You can drink, but I think that there is a lot of data and a lot of information and a lot of interviews with all these companies, not just ours on our YouTube channel, but in the public domain, like Tufi Saliba, who's the founder of Toda and Hypercycle, and Ben Gertzel. There's a lot of that. So just so you know, Hypercycle was the keynote speaker at Davos. Well, Davos is like, Bill Gates is there, all the big heavyweights, and we were a keynote speaker. There was just an AI conference in Panama. We were a keynote speaker. So you don't get invitations of that pedigree unless, you really meet the criteria. So, but anyway,
Wow,
everybody can
congratulations.
look at it. My son Jackson takes most of the technical questions here. If Josh has anything he wants to relay to us, We can point people in the right direction or help them answer some questions. We're very transparent and very communicative.
So for everybody in the space, if you go to the bottom right of the screen right now in the chat bubble, if you click on that, there's a bunch of links that have been included. One to hypercycle.ai. We also have a link that's directly to TotaQ, so you can find out more due diligence information there. Also, there's been a few articles and a few videos that have been uploaded to that chat, including on Infinity AI, which was also mentioned in this call. So please make sure you do some research, due diligence. If you have questions, contact me, direct message me. I answer my DMs, or contact the company 3D Capital. And with that, is there any other questions that we have right now? Alex Sunderland, did you have any questions for Sheldon?
Well, this has been absolutely fascinating, though. I've just been listening intently and looking up the tokens and looking up the sites, and I got to say, it's pretty exciting stuff.
Thank you.
Well, it's too much to cover in only one space. So for everybody's knowledge, we're going to have a follow-up space here in about 2 weeks with Sheldon. So there's going to be a lot more exciting news out. So please stay tuned. There's a lot of things that you want to know, and you can find them by following Sheldon, by following him on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and by following 3D Capital and seeing what they post in social media.
Yeah, and thank you, Josh, and
with that,
thanks everybody for attending. And if we're going to do this again in a couple weeks or so, we can, I can feature other things to talk about, as well as the milestones that have occurred in that intervening period.
I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, they're going to be exciting. I can tell you, I'm excited.
And let us know how it goes with NVIDIA. That's going to be an exciting conference. I can't wait to see what news comes out of that.
Yes, well, let's just say we're part of it.
Awesome. And it says a lot to know that you were at Davos as a keynote speaker, because that is a very tight-knit group of people that are able to even go to that. So that's an accolade in itself.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to reiterate that, these are at a very high level. These aren't a bunch of obscure people with, arm waving on something that's not real. 7 years is a long time to survive to get to this point. So the tech stack, the people involved, it's like I can go into the breadth and depth of the people that are involved in both TotaQ and Hypercycle. That's just two internationally, and very impressive. So, but I want to save some thunder for future calls. And like I say, when you look at 3D through either the website, you might have individual questions that come to mind about anyone. No questions bad. You know where we're focusing. I'm trying to start with what I consider to be, and I don't use this word lightly, killer apps. Email was a killer app. Internet's killer. Like, for us to say that we have two killer apps, and we've been told that, these are not my words. Well, killer apps trade in the hundreds of billions of dollars. That's just by fact, because they're disruptive, and it'd be almost impossible. So nobody asked, but how difficult would it be to reverse engineer or copy this tech? I would say, according to Google, almost impossible. But it's a very deep discussion of why there's multiple layers to this technology. It's not just some innovation. It's, like I say, Cambridge University out of the UK has written papers about TotaQ. So, and MIT is quite involved. So the science level, let's call it the computer science, is at an extremely high level of sophistication. Anyway, thank you, Josh.
Well, I look forward to having you back on. Thank you so much, Sheldon. Everybody, this is IDKFF go do your research.